Imagine wandering through a bustling Los Angeles boulevard in the early 1920s, past flappers in bobbed haircuts and men in straw boaters chatting outside soda fountains. Neon lights haven't taken over yet. This is the silent film age. You navigate the glamour of Hollywood's golden corridors until you arrive at a small, unassuming bungalow on a quiet side street. Within those walls, the city's latest scandal brews, a swirl of rumor about a smoldering starlet who just can't stop defying the rules. She's been called the girl who is too beautiful, a magnet for controversy, the living embodiment of jazz-era excess. Her name is Barbara La Marr, and at 20-something she's already married and maybe remarried more times than you can count on one hand. She's been hauled off to jail for drunken antics, whispered about for doping, and rumored to have an out-of-wedlock child she pretends is adopted. Yet somehow, none of that has stopped her from dazzling the silver screen or seducing a legion of fans hungry for novelty, glamour, and a hint of danger. To trace the roots of her saga, roll back to 1913. Barbara, then just 17 and going by the name Reatha Dale Watson, she'd change names more often than some folks change outfits, decides to run off and marry a fellow named Jack Laytell. The ceremony is small, quick, the kind you do when young lovers are seized by impulse. The union barely has time to settle before tragedy strikes. Laytell dies of pneumonia, leaving Reatha widowed before she turns 18. It's a somber start, but she seems undeterred. Just a year later, she marries Lawrence Converse, another whirlwind romance, only for him to die days afterward of a brain hemorrhage. The repeated shock spawns an undercurrent of gossip. Could she actually be practicing bigamy? Because the paperwork from Laytell's death wasn't even finalized when Converse passed. Most chalk it up to bizarre coincidence, tragic but not malicious. Reatha, however, soon leaps into a third marriage in 1916, this time with Phil Ainsworth. That union dissolves 2 years later when she flits off to Los Angeles, leaving him behind. She reappears in 1918, married to dancer Ben Dealey, who, by her account, shares her taste for lavish parties and carefree spending. For a while they revel in the swirl of vaudeville nightlife, racking up debts and raising eyebrows. By 1921, they're estranged. Then, in 1923, she latches onto cowboy actor Jack Dougherty. Remarkably, this is her fifth marriage in under a decade, all concluded before she's even 26. Through it all, the press can't get enough. They brand her the female Bluebeard or the great bigamist, though some details remain too murky to confirm. The public can't decide if they admire her independence or condemn her moral transgressions. Studio heads at first see potential star power in a woman who can generate so much talk. Any publicity is good publicity after all. But as she morphs from Reatha to Barbara La Marr and various other stage names along the way, the tension between her personal escapades and the studio's desire for a wholesome female lead intensifies. They'd prefer she stuck to sweet romantic illusions. She's the opposite, an unrepentant free spirit with a wild streak. Yet Hollywood beckons. By 1920, she's working on scripts. Yes, she's that multi-talented and dabbling in small acting roles. But one night in 1920, a boozy party in some downtown LA loft gets out of hand. Barbara emerges onto the street either still intoxicated or halfway to sobering up, only for a local beat cop to collar her for public intoxication. She's lugged off to the station, presumably spouting flamboyant protestations. The mugshot that emerges shows a defiant glare, lips parted in either shock or challenge. She's fined $25, a sum that, in 1920, equates to a few $100s today. It's a drop in the bucket for a future star. But the scandal stands. A creative young writer turned actress hammered in public. The tabloids pick up the story. She's not yet a household name, but those who read the gossip rags get an early glimpse of the brazen bohemian who will soon become a marquee idol. This minor fiasco sets a pattern. Barbara's social life outstrips the cautious norms of Hollywood. She drinks, parties, and flirts with reckless abandon. As the 1920s roar on, her career soars. She lands roles in quick succession, culminating in a star turn for studios that see her as a perfect vamp, the dark, sophisticated contrast to the blonde sweethearts. Titles like The Three Musketeers, 1921, or Trifling Women, 1922, present her as a cunning temptress, capitalizing on her exotic features and the brooding intensity behind her eyes. Fans call her the too beautiful star, transfixed by her sculpted cheekbones and sultry gaze. Yet beneath the cinematic illusions, she's fueling her energy with something more potent than stage adrenaline. She's turned to morphine, heroin, perhaps cocaine. Details are fuzzy, but multiple accounts mention drug-fueled nights in hidden speakeasies or visits to shady doctors prescribing tonics to keep her going through 16-hour shoots. She's rumored to show up on set either high or in withdrawal, her face gaunt, eyes ringed with exhaustion. Sound reminiscent of Wallace Reed's downfall from the same era? Indeed, parallels abound. But where Reed's addiction story became a major public cautionary tale, La Marr's was more carefully hidden, for a time. The studio spun illusions of her glamorous late-night partying, conveniently downplaying the narcotic aspect. The truth seeped out anyway. During the shooting of Dan McGrew, 1924, she allegedly collapsed mid-scene, trembling from a night of heavy doping. Crew members scrambled to hush it up, summoning private doctors instead of calling an ambulance, all in hopes of preserving her image. She returned a few days later, trying to muster that captivating gaze. Some close to the production whispered, "She's unstoppable," or "She's unstoppable until she dies." Studio heads muttered about liability, but her star power soared. Audiences adored her. The press devoured her scandalous romances, and box office receipts soared. Meanwhile, 1922 brings another drama. She becomes pregnant. The father? Unclear. Some suspect a powerful married producer, others name Paul Byrne, later known for marrying Jean Harlow and meeting a suspicious end. The only certainty is that in November or December, she has a son. But to swerve scandal, she conjures a ruse. The child is adopted from an orphanage in Texas. She calls him Marvin Carville La Marr, presenting him publicly as a rescue from a life of poverty. The press, sniffing the suspicious timing, begin to suspect otherwise. They quiz local officials in Texas, finding no record. Some tabloids state outright that she's lying, but Hollywood's publicity machine manages to bury the story. The child remains nominally her adopted son. In reality, it's her flesh and blood, the product of a secret liaison. Years later, the truth emerges, but at the time, only a few gossip mavens sense that something's off. She moves on, continuing her glamorous routine, baby stowed away with nannies. Yet the emotional weight of deception, combined with her endless doping, chips away at her soul. By 1925, her health is slipping. She's doing multiple pictures a year, like The Girl from Montmartre, a final frantic attempt at stardom. The camera tries to hide her increasingly skeletal figure. Some days she's only about 105 pounds, sustained on minimal food and maximum stimulants. The narrative that she's on a strict Hollywood diet to maintain that hourglass form is half lie, half truth. Yes, she starves herself, but also the cocktails of morphine or heroin kill her appetite. In late 1925 on set, she collapses again. This time the doctors can't pretend it's simple exhaustion. They diagnose pulmonary tuberculosis, complicated by advanced kidney inflammation, possibly from the toxins, possibly from malnutrition. She's told to rest, but she resists. She can't lose momentum. She's the breadwinner in a lavish lifestyle, the caretaker of her so-called adopted son, the star who can't afford to drop out of the public eye. She tries to push on, but her body is failing. In early January 1926, as filming of The Girl from Montmartre limps forward, she can barely stand. A double covers her wide shots. Crew whisper that death is near. She knows it too, begging them for just a few more days, desperate to finish. But around January 30th, 1926, at her home in Altadena, Barbara La Marr's body finally surrenders. She's 29 years old. The official cause, tuberculosis, with complications from kidney failure, doping, and exhaustion. One nurse claims to have found her with a morphine syringe nearby, though no one can confirm if that's a rumor or fact. Her last words remain contested. Some say she died in her bed, with husband Jack Doherty and the child present, or that a doctor arrived too late to save her from respiratory collapse. The coroner, Frank Nance, mentions the lethal synergy of narcotics, starved tissues, and a battered immune system. No formal inquest is conducted. Tinseltown hushes up the uglier details. The headlines that next day break the news: Barbara La Marr dies at 29, too beautiful for her own good. Fans reel. Many had no clue she was even ill. The hush around her drug use had been that effective. Her funeral on February 3rd, 1926, becomes a grand affair, reminiscent of the silent era's tragic passings like Rudolph Valentino. Over 10,000 fans gather outside Pierce Brothers Mortuary in Hollywood. Women weep openly. Men remove hats and bowheads. Among the pallbearers are silent era luminaries, rumored to include Douglas Fairbanks, the swashbuckling hero of the day, and possibly even Charlie Chaplin. The coffin is loaded with flowers from admirers worldwide. She's interred at Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Section 4, Lot 178, under a headstone that reads, "With God in the joy and beauty of youth." Fans interpret it as a poetic nod to her ephemeral loveliness, a last tribute to the star who soared so brightly and crashed so young. By that day's end, the city shifts into mourning mode. Some studios call off filming out of respect. Then, as is typical in Hollywood, everything speeds on. Another star scandal arises soon, overshadowing her tragedy. But for those who adored her, or who glimpsed her films in theaters, it's a bitter heartbreak that the too beautiful starlet is gone. In the aftermath, the press lumps her together with Wallace Reed as cautionary tales of silent cinema's doping epidemic. Paramount, scandal-ridden from Reed's meltdown, tries to distance itself. She'd mostly worked for other studios, though. The trade papers run pieces about how the demands of production schedules might have fueled her breakdown. A faint sense of guilt lingers around the industry, as if collectively acknowledging how it devours fragile performers for the sake of profit. Her husband, Jack Doherty, disappears from the limelight soon after. The bigger curiosity is that little boy, Marvin Carville La Marr. Studio whispers say he's truly her biological son. Officially, the studio line remains that she adopted him. But as time passes, more insiders speak up. Marvin eventually lands with comedic actress Zay Sue Pitts, who becomes his adoptive mother and renames him Don Gallery. He grows up away from Hollywood's inferno, only learning bits of his mother's identity later. In the 1970s or 1980s, he emerges briefly, speaking about the mother he never really knew, lamenting that the industry she loved might have contributed to her demise. From beyond the grave, Barbara La Marr's name flares up occasionally in film retrospectives. She never had the same posthumous cult following as, say, Clara Bow or Louise Brooks. Yet watchers of silent cinema find in her a mesmerizing presence. In early roles, she exudes wit and a smoldering intelligence, a sharp break from the vacant flapper stereotype. Some label her a proto-femme fatale, bridging the gap between naive silent heroines and the cunning women of film noir decades later. The heartbreak, of course, is that we'll never see how she might have evolved had she survived into talkies. With her low, smoky voice, perhaps she could have thrived, or maybe the environment that devoured her in silent pictures would have done the same with talkies. The point is moot. She's forever 29, a star overshadowed by the swirl of scandal, the mother of a hidden child, the woman who soared and crashed in a mere handful of years. And so her story stands as an early testament to Hollywood's ability to elevate mortals into demigods, only to discard them once they become liabilities. Her scandal-laced narrative, the marriages, the arrest, the doping, the out-of-wedlock son disguised as an adoption, plays out like a grim, racy script. But behind each bullet point was a real human being, desperate for love, chasing a fleeting high, and longing to remain relevant in a brutal industry. The system that thrived on her magnetism did little to safeguard her. By the time her final act arrived, they simply replaced her with the next fresh face. Perhaps if her story reminds us of anything, it's that no matter how luminous the star, the hungry machinery of Hollywood can devour it, leaving only footnotes and dusty film reels. Yet in quiet corners of film history, Barbara La Marr endures as a seductive, cautionary figure, a blend of raw artistry, taboo romance, unstoppable will, and ultimate tragedy. She lived, loved, defied norms, and lost. But in that fleeting run, she left an indelible imprint on the silent screen, a testament to the perils of living too fiercely in a world that demands silent submission. And ironically, that same world made her a legend,